Hi, I'm Stuart Baker, and welcome to another series episode of Chamber Talk. This week we have Lon Peterson, and he is the new Assistant City Manager for the City of Nevada City. So welcome, Lon.
Thank you.
So it's been, what has it been, 2 months now?
Yeah, it's been a few months since I started.
So just give us a little bit of a summary, like where are you from, what'd you do before this, and all of the good stuff, just before we get into the meat of things, but just so people know a little bit about you.
Yeah, so great questions. So I grew up in Sacramento mainly, so went to school there, graduated high school. From there, moved to Hawaii for a number of years, then came back. Yeah, it's pretty posh. Can't complain about that,
No,
definitely. And so that was a great experience, and came back, started going to school in Sacramento. And so been pretty much Northern California most of my life. Currently, as you know, I live in Marin. But as of a few days ago, I just moved to Nevada City.
To Spring Street,
Indeed, yeah. It's like right in the heart of the action. It's really cool.
So what did you do? So I know I was on your hiring committee, so I know a little bit about you, but I know the last position you had was working with Sonoma and Marin counties. Maybe tell us a little bit about that so we can understand like why you were the chosen one.
Yeah, well, back up a little bit because my government career actually started in Roseville. So I was working at City College, had an agency, was teaching design at Sac City College, and I moved to Roseville. I went to get a business license, and I just was kind of perplexed why they didn't have an ability to do a business license online at the time. And so I was like, man, I gotta so instead of like complaining about it, I was like, if there's ever a chance to like somehow work at government here and like really help things or whatever, I'm like, I gotta do that. And so I signed up for their jobs, and it was maybe a few months later they had it was like an online content manager or something job came up, and I was like, oh, what? Throw my hat in, and I ended up getting the job, which was really awesome. So I originally had planned on just going in there and fixing their web stuff for like a year or so, and then still running my agency. But like right after I got there, I just really enjoyed the whole local government thing. I was like, this is awesome. So stopped doing my agency, and then I was at Roseville for, I don't know, about 15 years or so, maybe a little less than that. And so did some really awesome stuff at Roseville, did a lot of communications, a lot of tech. And then doing a bunch of innovation at the city of Roseville, got connected with Palo Alto, and so I moved from Roseville to Palo Alto, and then went from Palo Alto for a number of years, which is really an awesome, like talking about innovation. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on there. So
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's just a cool, very cool vibe. So like downtown Palo Alto was cool, and so that was a great experience. Went from there to Marin Water District. So I had a lot of experience in water because Roseville has a water, they offer water as a public service as well. So I ended up at Marin Water doing communications and eventually water conservation, a lot of legislation. And then from there, came back to Sacramento, at the city of Sacramento, which is a pretty interesting experience to see my kids through high school. And so did that, then moved back to the Bay Area to Santa Clara a week before the pandemic. So I started this new job, and then everybody left. And so I was like going to the office, and it was a really cool experience to deal with like a lot of pivoting and a lot of cool stuff. So that was a great experience. So much going on down in South Bay. And then from there went to Santa Rosa, which is what you're talking about. And so I got hired there on their executive team. And I was the Chief Communications and Intergovernment Relations Officer. So it's a very long title, which is basically I did a lot of comm, engagement, and then legislative work.
So it's pretty amazing. We have all of this experience at our collective disposal? Because, it's like half the state from an insider's point of view, right?
Yeah, it was good.
That's great.
I specifically have been working towards like moving into city management, and a lot of it is around like just being able to be in the right position to like have an ability to innovate, and like being in those type of roles, like you just have a bigger footprint as to operate and like to get stuff done. So that's kind of where, like, when I left Roseville, it was very specific to like, all right, I'm going to go for it and see what I can do in government, and so that's kind of where I've gotten, that was like the premise of like moving in that direction.
Nice.
But yeah, I think still innovation is something that is like really, I'm like really passionate about. I like solving problems and just thinking like strategically, and also just thinking about like how can you innovate this to like do something different, or just a different approach to solving problems. And so that's kind of been throughout my career, kind of the emphasis of me getting government to solve problems. But even now it's more of like, all right, well, here I am, like what's out there, like what are the issues that we need to deal with. And so,
and I know, the city government, the workforce there is super small. It's one of the smaller city governments in the region, I would say, or at least, comparatively. What was the impetus to create the position? I know it was probably a discussion between city council and Sean, our city manager. What were the real needs that they were looking for when hiring for your position and finding you?
Yeah, so I wasn't there for all of the initial conversations around the position, but I do know, just based on like, and I'll talk about that in a second, just the small city. It is a small city. I think it's the smallest city in California. I could be wrong, but it's a very, as far as population goes, it's very small. And some of that is what drove me to want to come here. I have my own personal reasons we've talked about. Just it's such an incredible community. It's beautiful. It's just the vibe, like everything. But from a job perspective, when I saw it, like some of the things they were looking for from like the legislative, communications, project management, experience in the executive teams, and so there was a lot of alignment. But at the same time, for me, it was both. I just love this whole area. I've always wanted to be up here. I come here once a year regardless, and but it was also just the bigger picture of that. For me, long term, like having the experience to like really get my hands around a lot of different stuff was the most compelling, because like I could go to a bigger city where you're like specializing, like Santa Rosa is a good example. So great organization, had my own building, a big team, lots of stuff going on. It was great. I did a lot of grant work there. We got like $50 million over the last few years. Big, like lots of cool stuff. But it's like just narrowly focused, and so
either water
or just and so
public services or whatever.
And so it's kind of like, if you're like, hey, cool, you're a painter, we got painting, and you're like, but I also want to do sculptures or something in the art scene, right? So for me, I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity to really like get experience across all realms. And even though I've had experience being in the city manager's office at some of the most progressive cities in the state, it's different when you're like really partnering at the more local level, and you're doing the work. Unlike a lot of executive type positions where you might be like setting strategy, you really do the work here. And so even Sean, like that guy, because you've worked with him for a number of years, like that guy works. He's super efficient. He does the work, like from creating the agenda to running the meetings, coordinating with council. Like he really is a hands-on city manager, but also like super smart. So just to back up a little bit about the whole chamber talk, when I was looking at the job and prepping for the interview between you guys, I watched those videos. It was like Heather Heckler's been on, and other people in the community, Sean, city manager Grayson, and so I watched those, and I was like, you get a sense of like your personality, and I was like, oh, Stuart seems really cool. It'd be cool to work with that guy in the future. Let's see what happens. And then watching Sean, and just like he's witty.
That's gonna be my boss.
But like he jokes around, but he's also very serious, and now working with him, like he is like wicked smart. I mean, like anytime I'm like, hey, what about that thing? You think he'd be like, oh, let me
yeah.
look into it. He's like, oh, section 419,
I
section,
know, it's
and you're just like,
phenomenal.
what? Like you got
Like,
a
how did you get
photographic
that?
memory? Yeah, he's
Yeah,
like super
right.
smart. Also just super gracious. So I just felt like between getting, coming here with my experience, but being able to like, expand about, that and then
Hmm.
work with somebody like Sean would be good for the long-term career. Plus it
That's
was just
great.
Nevada City. Like I said, like
Right,
this place
awesome.
is just like, it's
So
incredible.
tell us a couple of maybe big projects or things that you're really excited to really delve deep in that you're working on now.
Yeah, great segue to that. One of the things that, at least for me, that I think is really cool, and I'm doing a bunch of internal stuff. I'll talk more about some of that, but is skate park project. So have you heard
Hmm.
about this?
The skate park, yeah,
Okay,
that's
cool.
going in at the Bodie
Yeah,
House.
yeah.
Yeah,
So when I got on, was talking to Sean about project, we went over that, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." So
yeah.
I grew up in Sacramento, skateboarding as a teenager. I mean, it was
Hmm.
like 35 something plus years ago, but so I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a perfect
Hmm.
fit." So
Right,
so even today, so we went out this morning and kind of looked at some of the space and the topography to kind of get a feel for like where the skate park might go. And so it's awesome. Like I was out there, I was like, wow, this is like super cool. So
yeah,
there's a lot of work that we have to do within that project, but it's the potential and then just like it's overall like where it's located. It's kind of
right.
like tucked way back in there, so away from like a lot of neighborhoods. And just the opportunities, I've seen kids skating around town and there's
Hmm.
not a lot of space. Old
Right.
Town doesn't really have,
Support it,
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, even though you want to be like, oh, it's great to have that, but it's like
yeah,
you either have to go to Grass Valley Skate Park, which they're
right,
they're in the middle of. I don't know where they're at. If they demoed it yet, but they're going to be
hmm,
demoing that park,
right.
and replacing it, which is great. And so in the same vein, we're going to be creating our own little park. It obviously, it's not going to be as big. We don't have as much
Hmm.
funding, but really
So
a great opportunity to
nice.
put a community feature for a skate park that can be used by bikes and other things as long as
So before we go, just want to make sure we catch some of the other projects that
yeah.
you might be working on. Maybe you just
Hmm.
give a summary of a couple
Yeah.
things, just so
So,
people know.
yeah, communications. So I'm working on a communication strategy, which is the bigger picture engagement. And
Hmm.
it's not that we don't do engagement, but it's more of just looking at it like, are we doing the right things? How are we reaching our audience? Like, how do
Right.
we use and coordinate with like our great media partners to extend our reach? And
Hmm.
and so I think, and then collaboration, which to me is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today. Um, this county and city and organizations is the most collaborative that I have ever worked in. And so and I'm not just saying that because I'm here, but I kind of was blown away like after the first few weeks of how everybody is so connected and really has to work together to solve problems.
Yeah.
And
Well, when
it's
you have
just
limited
awesome.
resources,
Well, yeah, I
that's
think
the thing.
it's a combo of that, but I think the other thing to me that and this is again just perception, is that there's a friendliness level here
Hmm.
that it just feels like, I don't know, there's something about it. It just feels like everybody's a little
Mutually supportive. Right.
supportive, friendly, collaborative. It just, there's something
Hmm.
about the way just you walk down, whether you're in Broad or you're in a county building.
Hmm.
Yeah, everybody's just been, it's just, working with the arts, see, I
Yeah.
mean, everybody, like across
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
board,
That's great.
I feel that's definitely something that embodies both the city, but also like our agencies
Yeah.
and, the
Yeah.
chamber and everybody. I mean,
No, it's true. I totally agree with you. So before we
Mhm.
close off, any final words? Any other project you want to throw in before we
Yeah,
wrap up?
so there's a council meeting tonight, which
Hmm.
one of the things that we always encourage people in the community to be active and come down and participate in local government.
Hmm.
But at the same time, there's before the council meeting tonight, there's the Champ Art Gallery grand opening,
Hmm.
and so that's happening tonight, 5:30 to 6:30 before the council meeting. So we encourage the public to come down, and so you think about
So just get involved in your
get
community, especially
absolutely,
if
yeah.
you were, having issues with changes on other
Hmm.
levels of government. Focus
Hmm.
on the community at hand and
Yeah.
really go. And because, yeah, this is where you can really make a change. So,
Yeah. So my
anyway,
final thing is,
yeah.
I'd say this is one other thing about the city is it's very accessible. It's a small, quaint downtown, like, City Hall.
Right.
I encourage people to walk in, come in the doors, ask for Sean, myself, somebody on staff if they need something, have a great idea. I mean, you name it. So,
That's
we're
great.
very accessible. So you can email me, lon.peterson@nevadacityca.gov, or
Nice.
give anybody at the city a call and
Great.
ask for me, or find me on the
Awesome.
website or
Yes.
whatever. But yeah, feel free to reach out anytime.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you, Lon. This
You're
was
welcome.
excellent. And thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.